I was about 8 the first time I realized I wasn't really a daughter to them, at least not the kind they wanted. It was the night Brielle spilled hot tomato bisque on Mom's cream rug. I hadn't even opened my mouth when Dad's belt was already in his hand. Claire probably egged her on, Mom muttered without looking up from her glass of Chardonnay. And just like that, I was dragged into punishment I hadn't earned. Brielle, younger by 2 years, got wiped down with a silk napkin and ushered to the guest bathroom with soft words. I got a welt on my thigh and no dinner. I remember crying silently behind my bedroom door that night, listening to their laughter in the kitchen. That was the moment something in me curled inward, quiet, small, and cold. But I stayed. Because where do you go when the people who made you also break you? Now I was 26, same house, same rug. Only now I paid rent to live here. Yes, rent. To my parents, Roger and Denise Hartley. Brielle, meanwhile, lived in the renovated guest suite, rent-free, driving the old Subaru I bought with my first real paycheck. They told me it made sense. "You're using the main house, Claire," Mom said, as if I was occupying Buckingham Palace. "You're an adult now. Time to contribute." And yet, the only thing Brielle ever contributed was empty La Mer jars and wet towels on the carpet. She floated through life like she was allergic to effort. Still, they loved her for it. Me? I worked 6 days a week at a dusty little secondhand bookstore near Main Street, serving retirees and former professors who liked the smell of paper and disappointment. My paycheck barely covered groceries, and my parents made sure I felt that. One Tuesday in March, I came home soaked to the bone, my thrift store boots squelching with every step. It had rained all afternoon, and the bookstore heater was broken. My fingers were numb, my back aching from lifting boxes of donated books. I dropped my bag by the door and shuffled into the hallway bathroom, praying for a warm bath. Just one. The water heater had finally been replaced thanks to Brielle's request. "It's ruining my hair," she'd whined last week. That was all it took. And for once I thought, maybe I could just take one small luxury without asking. I turned the faucet. The pipes groaned, then steam. I stripped off my damp clothes and stepped in, letting the warmth wrap around my aching body. I almost cried from relief. Then, pain. Scalding, searing pain. Like my skin was being shredded by invisible knives. I screamed and scrambled out my feet, slipping on the slick tiles. That's when I saw them floating in the tub. 3 socks rolled tightly into wet balls. Stained, mildewed, reeking of rot. I recognized the pink rhinestone logo instantly. Brielle's. I stumbled backward, my arms blistering my skin, flushed and peeling in patches. Wrapped in a threadbare towel, I rushed down the hall, my chest tight with disbelief. My mom sat at the kitchen island, slicing cherries into a bowl. She didn't even glance up. "Maybe now you'll smell like someone useful," she said with a smirk, popping a cherry into her mouth. "Those socks cost more than your job." "Pays," Brielle chirped from behind her phone, laughing like a mean girl in a high school movie. Now she's got something in common with the trash bin. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break something. But I just stood there 26 years old, shaking burned, humiliated, and no one gave a damn. That night I curled in bed with frozen peas wrapped in paper towels, listening to my parents laugh in the living room. I didn't cry, I didn't move, but something inside me shifted. I stopped thinking about escape. I started thinking about strategy. The next morning, I made pancakes for everyone, smiled when Dad made a joke about Meltdown Girl. I even offered to vacuum Brielle's car while she watched TikToks from the couch. They started letting their guard down. They thought I was folding. What they didn't know was that I'd already started building the plan. It began with a text I wasn't supposed to see. It was a Thursday night. I was folding laundry, hers obviously, when Brielle burst into the house, mascara-smeared heels in hand, and breath sharp with the tang of cheap vodka and high-end perfume. She flopped onto the couch, talking into her speakerphone. "I told you, babe," she slurred. "Nobody's gonna find out. I used Claire's ID. The loser doesn't even know." I froze. My name flashed on the screen, a selfie from my driver's license. Her voice slurred on. "As long as I use her name, all the background checks pass. It's brilliant. The texts don't even check that crap. Claire's so invisible she's practically a ghost." Then came a chuckle from the voice on the line. "You're lucky the meds didn't react. Faking prescriptions is dicey, babe. But damn, you're hot when you lie." I stood there, my heart pounding like a war drum. The water heater incident had been cruel. This was criminal. Identity fraud. Medical fraud. She wasn't just stealing my name, she was using it to get a job handling real medication at a government-funded clinic. And suddenly everything made sense. The new clothes, the Apple Watch, the Uber Eats orders. It was all coming from a job that should have never been hers. Worse, my parents knew. I overheard them whispering about how well Brielle was doing, and how Claire should be more supportive. Later that night, I crept into the kitchen. Mom sat in the dark, sipping her wine, like a character in a Tennessee Williams play. I whispered, "She's using my name to work at a clinic, with real patients." Mom didn't flinch. She smiled into her glass and said, "Then maybe you're finally good for something." I didn't sleep that night. I made coffee, opened my laptop, and started taking notes. Because this wasn't just about me anymore. This was about every single time they'd told me I didn't matter. Every slap, every snide remark, every time I was invisible. They thought I was weak, but they forgot weak people don't plan, they endure until they don't. And as I clicked through pharmacy laws, whistleblower statutes, and license verification portals, I smiled for the first time in weeks. Because I knew exactly where this was going, and they wouldn't see it coming. By sunrise, I had 3 legal pads full of notes, each line etched in the kind of handwriting you use when you're no longer scared, tight, steady, sharp. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to confront her. I was going to collect. The first step was research. I dug through Brielle's room while she slept off her hangover, careful not to disturb her curated mess of Sephora bags and good vibes only throw pillows. Inside, her canvas tote was a printed schedule MedCorp Community Clinic, 9:00 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., Monday through Friday. I took a photo. Then I checked the ID badge clipped to her purse. It had my name, my photo. But the job title read, Pharmacy Technician 2. That job required state certification minimum 2 years experience and a clean license record. Brielle had none of it. I had enough to start, but not enough to finish. Not yet. At lunch, I played the part, made avocado toast for her, asked about her day. "Oh, you know," she yawned, scrolling through her texts, "just saved lives, no biggie." I smiled. "You're amazing," I said, and she believed me. That night, I snuck into Dad's office, the one he barely used now, since retiring from the sheriff's department. The drawers still smelled like Old Spice and gun oil. I found a manila envelope labeled Important Docs, and inside Jackpot, a copy of my birth certificate, a social security card, even an old college transcript I never finished using. No doubt they'd use these to pass a background check for Brielle. Mom worked in nails, but her real talent was finding ways to fake legitimacy. I took photos of everything, email backups, screenshots, even the MedCorp's employee directory where Claire Hartley was listed as a verified employee. I wanted this airtight, no speculation, just facts. Every night I added more to the growing file I kept tucked inside a hollowed-out copy of Jane Eyre. Symbolic, really. A woman discarded by her family, underestimated until she found her own voice. By the 3rd week, I started compiling a second folder, one for the abuse. The verbal jabs were easy. I recorded them on my phone, hidden in my hoodie pocket while I vacuumed or washed dishes. The physical proof took more planning. I went to an urgent care clinic 3 towns over, paid in cash for an evaluation of the burn scars on my forearm. Industrial exposure, the nurse asked. Accidental scalding, I replied. I didn't lie, I just didn't tell the whole truth. They gave me a treatment report and even offered counseling. I declined for now. I needed documentation, not closure, not yet. I began logging everything: photos of the towel they gave me after the sock bath, a dirty beige rag with frayed edges and a cigarette hole in the corner. I saved text messages where Mom mocked me for looking like something that crawled out of a Goodwill bin. Every piece went into the folder, sealed, labeled, and backed up to an encrypted drive. I worked alone. No one to tell, no one to warn. But that changed one day at the bookstore. Mrs. Levine, one of our regulars, came in asking for a copy of The Ethics of Modern Medicine. Her daughter worked for the state pharmacy board. Really, I asked, pretending not to tremble. Yeah, she said, placing her purse on the counter. She just wrapped up a fraud case involving a woman who was administering medication under a dead woman's identity. Can you believe that I smiled and rang up her books, but inside, a fuse lit? A third path had opened, one I hadn't considered. Not just anonymous reporting. I could submit everything directly to the people who had power to pull a license. I spent the weekend finalizing both files. For Brielle, it included voice memos, screenshots of text messages bragging about gaming, the system photos of her badge, and a copy of her falsified employment documents. For my parents, the file was thicker records of financial exploitation, housing inequality, medical neglect, and years of verbal and emotional abuse. I wrote a cover letter, brief detached factual. I signed it with my real name, not to claim credit, but to reclaim identity. I made 3 copies of each file. One set went to the Oregon State Pharmacy Board, another to the Department of Health and Human Services. The final one to Erin Delgado, an investigative journalist I'd followed for years. She specialized in community health scandals and had a reputation for protecting sources. I mailed them out on a Monday. No return address, no fingerprints. Just truth sealed tight in yellow envelopes. Then I waited. At home, nothing changed on the surface. Brielle still walked around like she was America's next top nurse. Dad still barked at me for leaving lights on, like a damn guest. Mom still hummed along to daytime talk shows while calling me the mope in the corner. But underneath I'd changed. I was no longer surviving. I was observing, preparing, and every moment they thought I was folding, I was just coiling tighter. Friday morning, I painted Brielle's nails. She was FaceTiming her boss while I filed the glitter polish. "Of course I'm certified," she giggled. "Graduated top of my class. My sister. Ugh, she's like a Pinterest board of failure." I smiled and nodded, careful not to let my hand tremble. Her nails looked perfect, almost like the calm before a storm. That afternoon, while I restocked books at work, my phone buzzed. A news alert. MedCorp under investigation for fraudulent employment practices. My heart stopped. It had begun. By Saturday morning, whispers had already started in the neighborhood. Mrs. King from next door asked Mom if she'd heard about the MedCorp scandal, something about fraudulent employees and a surprise audit. I watched Mom blink too quickly, fake a chuckle, then change the subject to her rose bushes. But behind her eyes, I saw it. Doubt. A flicker of unease she'd never let me see before. She knew. She didn't know how much I knew, but she felt something shift, and it made her nervous. Brielle didn't feel it yet. She was still riding high on her fake success, sipping iced coffee from a 7-liter cup, and planning her promotion vacation to Tulum. She mentioned it casually while applying lip gloss in the mirror. I might have to switch clinics. My boss is acting weird, probably jealous. I bit back a smile. At work, I kept my head down. The news story hadn't named names yet, but I knew that wouldn't last. Erin Delgado hadn't responded to my file, no acknowledgement, no sign, but that was fine. She didn't need to. She was the kind of journalist who let her work speak louder than a press release. I checked her blog daily. Each day more details emerged: missing certifications, fake licenses, stolen identities. Still anonymous, but narrowing, like a spotlight slowly tightening. And I knew exactly when it would land. The tipping point came on Tuesday. I came home to find Brielle pacing the kitchen, her phone clenched like a weapon. "They're doing a second audit," she said, more to herself than to me. "And someone from the board called. They said there's been a tip, a formal investigation. Someone's trying to screw me." I stirred the pasta I was making, careful to keep my tone casual. "Weird. But if everything's legit, you've got nothing to worry about, right?" She froze, eyes narrowing. "Why would you say that?" I turned and smiled. "Because you said you're top of your class, licensed, certified, right?" She didn't answer, just stared. For a second I saw panic flicker across her perfectly contoured face. But it passed. She laughed. "Relax, you're just mad because I'm successful." She stormed off, slamming the door behind her, but the seed was planted. That night, I opened my old wooden jewelry box, the one Dad had given me on my 16th birthday. It had a false bottom, and tucked beneath it was a small velvet pouch. Inside was a fountain pen, silver-trimmed, worn smooth by decades of use. It had belonged to my grandfather, a pharmacist before the war. He used to write prescriptions in the back of his tiny Oregon shop using that very pen. I never met him, but Dad used to say he believed in doing it the right way, even when it was harder. I'd forgotten that until now. I held the pen in my hand for a long time. It felt heavy in the best way, like truth. The next morning I left early and took a bus across town. I wasn't working that day, but I had an appointment. At the Oregon State Pharmacy Board, the building was cold and efficient, full of people who didn't make small talk. I asked to speak with someone in investigations. A woman named Marla greeted me, kind but professional. "You were the one who sent the file," she said softly after I confirmed my name. "We've matched several items to known violations." "Thank you." I nodded, then hesitated. My parents knew. They let her use my name. They helped her. Marla didn't flinch. "We suspected. There's a second investigation. But for now, we're focused on preventing more harm." She has access to real medication. We can't risk this continuing. I signed an official statement. It felt like setting down a weight I didn't know I'd been carrying. When I left the building, I didn't look back. Thursday evening it happened. I was upstairs folding laundry when I heard the knock. Firm, no nonsense. The kind that didn't belong to neighbors or delivery drivers. I stepped to the landing and peeked down just as Brielle opened the door. Her silk robe barely tied her expression smug. It dropped in an instant. 2 men stood at the door dressed in dark coats flashing state badges. "Are you Brielle Hartley?" She hesitated. Yes, we're with the Oregon Pharmacy Board. We're following up on a report involving falsified credentials and unlawful medical practices. May we come in?" "Wait, what? There must be a mistake," she stammered. I'm licensed, ma'am. We have documentation photos, employment records, and communication logs. You've been working under someone else's identity. That's a felony offense under both state and federal law." My parents rushed in from the kitchen. Mom grabbed the man's badge like she could tear the truth out of it. "This is harassment. She's our daughter," Dad's voice thundered. "You're ruining a good girl's life." But then came the sentence that cracked the floor beneath them. "She's been using the identity of Claire Hartley, your other daughter." All eyes turned. Mom went pale. Dad's jaw tightened. Brielle spun to look up at the stairs. I didn't hide. I stepped forward, calm, barefoot on the carpet. She stole my name. You helped her. Now live with it. Before anyone could scream another knock, a second pair of visitors stood at the door. This time, a woman in a charcoal blazer holding a file and a calm, practiced smile. Claire Hartley. I nodded. I'm with the Department of Health and Human Services. We received an anonymous report of long-term familial abuse. May I speak with you privately? Silence fell like snow. Mom's mouth opened. Wait, no, she's just sensitive. She exaggerates. The woman didn't look at her. She looked at me. Would you prefer we step outside? No, I said, my voice clear. Let's talk. The investigator's voice was soft, but it carried weight like a stone dropped into still water. Would you like to speak somewhere private? She asked again. I nodded and led her out to the front porch. The late afternoon sun was low, turning everything golden, but I felt none of its warmth. My skin prickled with adrenaline. She introduced herself, Angela, from the Department of Health and Human Services. She had kind eyes and a voice that didn't rush. I sat across from her on the porch swing, my hands folded tightly in my lap. Claire, she began, I want you to know we take these reports seriously. I've read the files, the photos, but I'd like to hear it from you, in your own words. For the first time in my life, someone asked what happened and meant it. I started slowly, cautiously, like stepping into cold water. I told her about the unequal treatment growing up, the silent punishments, the favoritism so blatant it felt rehearsed. I described the boiling bath, the moldy socks, the cracked towel. I showed her my arm, still slightly scarred where the skin had blistered. Her face didn't change. No shock, no pity. Just calm, focused listening. That made it easier. I spoke of the years I'd paid rent while Brielle lived like royalty. About the secondhand boots, the cracked soap, the way they laughed when I cried. Did you ever tell anyone before now, she asked. I shook my head. They convinced me I was just dramatic, that it was my fault for being disappointing. Angela scribbled notes but never interrupted. When I mentioned the forged documents, the stolen identity, the deliberate silencing, she nodded like pieces of a puzzle were locking into place. You said they used your identity. Yes, for a pharmacy job. Brielle had no license, no qualifications, but she used my name to pass the background checks. Angela leaned back slightly as if absorbing the weight of it. And your parents knew they helped her. When I told my mom, she smiled, said I was finally useful for something. She asked for the files. I retrieved the copies I had stored in the hollowed-out Jane Eyre. She flipped through them with the steady precision of someone used to seeing horror hidden in plain sight. Photos, doctor's notes, screenshots, voice recordings. She paused at one of the memos, Brielle's voice laughing. Nobody checks the trash bin, daughter. Angela didn't react, but I saw her lips tighten. Back inside, the storm had begun. Brielle was shouting, demanding answers from the pharmacy board agents. You don't understand, I'm good at this. People love me, I save lives. One of them calmly replied, that may be, but impersonating a certified technician is illegal. This isn't about performance, it's about public safety. She was handcuffed gently, but without apology. My mother lunged forward. You can't do this. She's our daughter. The lead agent didn't even look at her. Then you should have protected her by telling her the truth mattered. Dad stood frozen. He hadn't said a word, just clenched his fists until his knuckles turned white. When Brielle was escorted out, she turned to me, her voice cracked not from guilt, but betrayal. You did this to me. I met her eyes. No, you did this to yourself. I just stopped protecting the lie. Angela stayed a few minutes longer, confirming timelines, verifying that I had a safe place to go. I told her I had savings, enough to leave. Do you have a support system? She asked. Not really, I said. But I have something better. I have clarity. She smiled faintly. Sometimes that's all you need to start over. Before leaving, she handed me a card. If you need anything, even just to talk, call me. I tucked it into the back pocket of my jeans like a lifeline. The house felt quieter than it had in years, hollow like the walls were finally tired of holding secrets. My parents retreated to the kitchen, whispering furiously, but no one shouted anymore. For the first time, their power had fractured, and I knew it wouldn't stop there. The pharmacy board had jurisdiction over Brielle, but I'd sent a third file, and that storm hadn't hit yet. Erin Delgado hadn't called, she hadn't written, but her silence was no longer unsettling. It was strategic. The next morning, the mailbox held a single envelope. No return address, just my name, handwritten in blocky letters. I opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a typed note. Thank you for trusting the truth. It's bigger than you know. You'll see soon. It was signed ED. My breath caught. She had received it, and she was acting on it. I spent the day packing, just the essentials, clothes, documents, the pen, my backup files. I didn't tell my parents. They didn't ask. The silence between us was brittle like glass ready to shatter. That night, as I zipped my final bag, I heard the local news anchor's voice drift from the living room TV, an exclusive series on credential fraud and systemic negligence in Oregon's healthcare sector. The investigation led by reporter Erin Delgado begins tonight with shocking revelations involving local clinics. I didn't go into the room. I didn't need to watch. I already knew the story. I had written it. I didn't watch the broadcast, but I felt it ripple through the house like an earthquake no one wanted to admit had hit. By morning, our block was quieter than usual. Cars passed more slowly. Neighbors lingered near their mailboxes, casting glances that slipped away when I looked up. The Delgados didn't wave like they used to. Mrs. Rayburn, who once dropped off homemade muffins, now crossed the street when she saw my dad outside. And my parents, well, something in them had collapsed overnight. Dad stayed in the den, all day, blinds drawn, remote in hand, but the TV off. Mom moved silently, her eyes darting between her phone and the front window, like she was waiting for the world to come crashing through it. I got up early and walked down to the cafe 2 blocks over. It was one of the few places I felt invisible, and that morning, that was a blessing. I sat at a corner table with my tea and pulled out my phone. Erin Delgado had posted a follow-up. The headline hit like a drumbeat, licensed to lie, the Hartley case. My fingers hovered for a second before I tapped it open. The article was longer than I expected, detailed, precise. Names were now public. Brielle Hartley arrested on charges of identity fraud, unlicensed medical practice, and reckless endangerment. What stunned me most wasn't the facts, it was the tone. Erin didn't write like a stranger. She wrote like someone who had seen inside the walls of our house. She was the bright one, the article quoted a former teacher. But her sister Claire, quiet, always working, always alone. People didn't notice her. Maybe they should have. Erin had done more than report she had dug. Interviews with former neighbors, teachers, even a retired pharmacist who'd once mentored my grandfather. She painted a picture not just of Brielle's fraud, but of a culture of silence, favoritism, and manipulation that allowed it to grow. The second half of the article detailed the abuse file, my photos, my scars, my voice. And then it said, the one thing I'd never dared believe. This is not just a story about stolen identity. It's about the erasure of one woman's existence and how she took it back. When I walked home, I didn't even notice the whispers anymore. Let them talk. Let them speculate. The truth was no longer locked behind our door. It was on the front page. Inside, my parents were seated at the kitchen table. Something about the posture struck me too still, too rehearsed, like stage actors waiting for their cue. Mom cleared her throat. We want to talk. I didn't sit. Now you do? Dad looked up slowly. You've humiliated this family. My mouth curled without smiling. No, you did that. I just turned on the lights. Mom's voice cracked. Do you have any idea what you've done to us? I blinked. Do you have any idea what you did to me? I don't know what they expected: tears, apologies, maybe a willingness to pretend none of it ever happened. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I was the one who stood in courtrooms and told the truth, the one whose story was now out there for people to learn from, not pity. They didn't raise that version of me they tried to kill her. And still I grew. "I'm leaving tomorrow," I said simply. "Where will you go?" Mom asked, and for the first time her voice wasn't angry, it was scared. "Somewhere that isn't here," I replied. "Somewhere I don't have to ask permission to exist." They didn't follow me when I went back upstairs. I spent the rest of the day organizing. I packed clothes, essentials, and tucked the fountain pen into the side pocket of my canvas bag. It wasn't just a relic anymore. It was a reminder: integrity doesn't need a spotlight to survive. It just needs a place to write itself new. That night, while brushing my teeth, I caught my reflection in the mirror. For a moment, I didn't recognize myself, not because I looked different, but because I stood taller, calmer. I didn't flinch at my own eyes anymore. That was new. But peace didn't last. Just after midnight, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I picked up. A raspy voice slurred through the speaker. "You think you won?" It was Brielle. I said nothing. "You think this is over?" She continued, breathless, bitter. "You ruined my life, Claire." I almost laughed. "No, Brielle. You did that the second you decided mine was disposable." She paused, then hissed, "You don't know who you're messing with. I still have friends, people who owe me. This isn't done." I hung up without another word, but I didn't sleep. Because I knew the way she worked. Chaos wasn't her weakness, it was her comfort zone. And cornered animals bite hardest. The morning after Brielle's call, I didn't feel fear. Not exactly. It was something sharper, quieter. A tension in my spine, a voice in the back of my head, whispering, "Stay alert." I tossed my phone into a drawer and grabbed my bag. I wasn't staying in that house 1 minute longer. I had a rental booked across town, and the deposit already paid in cash. It was a small walk-up apartment with peeling paint and creaky floors, but the air was mine. No echoes of slammed doors or cherry pits on the kitchen table. I didn't tell my parents I was leaving. I didn't even leave a note. By the time I set my last box down, the first text came in. "You can't hide it. Read, no number, no name." Then another, "They'll turn on you next," and then silence. I blocked the number anyway. The next morning, I called the detective who had been assigned to Brielle's case. I wasn't sure what I expected. Maybe advice, maybe protection, but I got neither. "Unless there's a direct threat or violation of a restraining order, there's not much we can do," she said flatly. "But log everything. Keep your phone close." That was the thing no one tells you about justice, even when you win. The aftermath is a quiet war. No parades, no closure, just awareness. And in that awareness, I started building a new routine. Work, cook, read, walk, repeat. I got a part-time position at an actual pharmacy. Ironic, I know. But this time, I earned it. No stolen names, no shortcuts. My supervisor, Maeve, was in her 60s, sharp as glass, and kind in a no-nonsense way. "I don't care where you came from," she said on day one. "Just don't mess with the inventory and keep your head down during audits." I nodded. It was the fairest start I'd ever been given. Still, Brielle's voice lingered like smoke. I changed my phone number, switched to paperless everything, even installed a security camera outside my new door. Paranoia. Maybe. But when someone's used your name like a mask, you learn how fast identity can unravel. One afternoon, Maeve called me to the back room. She held up a newspaper. "You seen this?" On the front page was a follow-up article: Hartley scandal widens, new claims surface. This time, it wasn't just about Brielle. The story exposed my parents' payments made to cover up licensing gaps, fake character references for Brielle, submitted under Dad's name, a trail of ignored complaints filed against her clinic. Some dating back years. My father's signature was on them. My mother's phone number was listed as an emergency contact for patients who'd received incorrect medication. They weren't just complicit, they were co-conspirators. Maeve looked at me, expression unreadable. "This your family?" I nodded. "Was." She folded the paper neatly. "Well, whatever you did to get out, good. Don't look back." But looking back was all anyone else was doing. My old high school friends messaged me out of the blue, some curious, some apologetic. I had no idea. "You were always so quiet. Brielle seemed so perfect." I didn't answer any of them. The next evening, as I was leaving work, I noticed a car idling across the street, windows tinted, engine running. I paused, keys clenched in my hand like a blade. It didn't move, didn't honk, just sat there, watching. I ducked into a side alley and circled around through the back lot. No sign of the driver, but I didn't sleep much that night. I double-locked my door, slept with the pen in my nightstand drawer. A week passed, then 2. Things calmed at least on the outside, but I could feel something building again. One afternoon, an envelope arrived at the pharmacy. No stamp, no name. Just my name, Claire, written in shaky block letters. I opened it in the break room, heart pounding. Inside was a single photo. Me from the week before, walking home, taken from behind. The caption scribbled underneath, "Still pretending you're safe." My hands trembled. Maeve noticed and took the photo gently from me. She said nothing, just folded it in half and locked it in her drawer. "You're not alone," she said simply. "They want you scared. That means you're still a threat." That night, I called Angela, the investigator from the Department of Health. I hadn't spoken to her in weeks. Her voice was warm but firm. "You did everything right, Claire. The rest is up to the system now." "Then why does it feel like I'm still in danger?" I whispered. She paused. "Because some people don't just want power. They need to believe they're untouchable, and when that belief shatters, they'll do anything to glue it back together." The next morning, I woke to a voicemail. It was Erin Delgado. "Claire," her voice was tight, almost urgent. "I think you need to see something. Meet me at the Civic Center steps noon. Come alone." The Civic Center steps felt colder than they should have been for a spring afternoon. I arrived 10 minutes early, sitting on the third step from the bottom, my hands clenched around the strap of my canvas bag. A breeze carried the scent of food trucks and cigarette smoke. People passed by, oblivious. Normal. But I wasn't here for normal. I was waiting for Erin Delgado, the one voice in this whole storm that never shook. When she finally arrived, she moved with purpose. No makeup, hair pulled into a tight ponytail. She looked tired, like someone who hadn't slept in days. "Claire," she said, offering a quick nod. "Thank you for coming." I stood. "What's going on?" Erin didn't answer right away. Instead, she handed me a flash drive. "There's more, and I need you to see it before it goes public." I hesitated, my fingers brushing the cool plastic. "More." She exhaled slowly. I traced some of the forged credentials used in Brielle's file. Turns out, she didn't fake them alone. The application package came from a consulting firm in Seattle that specializes in, let's call them, backdoor certifications. My stomach twisted. "You mean someone sold her fake medical licenses?" Erin nodded grimly. "Not just sold, delivered, coached, covered. And your father's name came up twice. He vouched for 2 other applicants. Ones I've confirmed were unqualified." I sat back down, knees suddenly shaky. "Why would he?" "Because your family wasn't just enabling Brielle." Erin interrupted. "They were part of a pipeline, a quiet one, but real." She sat beside me. "That's why she feels untouchable. Because up until now, she was." I stared at the flash drive. "So what?" Now Erin's voice dropped to a whisper. "Now we go federal. The paper will run the expose next week, but I gave you this first because you deserve the truth before the world sees it. And because there's a chance your father's going to try and disappear some of this before it lands." I blinked hard. "Disappear how? Payments, phone logs, deleted emails. But we're ahead of him. Barely." She stood. "Claire, I need you to stay safe. These people are desperate. Desperate people make dangerous choices." That night I sat in my apartment flash drive plugged into my laptop, watching documents load, contracts, messaging threads, a scanned letter with my dad's signature. He hadn't just known, he had built the scaffolding that allowed Brielle to steal my name, my future. The weight of it hit me all over again, not just the betrayal, but the scale of it. My entire childhood hadn't just been neglect. It was grooming, conditioning. They made me feel small so Brielle could feel big. They erased my worth so hers could shine brighter. I didn't sleep. Instead, I wrote. Every memory, every bruise, every silence I swallowed. I filled a new file. This one wasn't for the press. It was for me, to remember, to never shrink back again. The next morning, Erin's story broke. Front page, nationwide. Headlines screamed, "Medical fraud ring, traced to Oregon family ties." My family's name was all over it. My photo, just a small one, appeared near the end. The caption read, "Whistleblower who brought the truth forward." Maeve called during my lunch break. "Kid," she said, "you've started something. Don't stop now." I smiled even if my hands shook. That afternoon I was pulled aside by the pharmacy owner. "We read the article," he said. My heart froze. "You're not in trouble," he added quickly. "Quite the opposite. We'd like to offer you full time. and help sponsor your path to become a licensed tech if you want it. I nodded slowly. Yes, I want it. By the end of the week, the fallout was everywhere. My father was subpoenaed. My mother refused interviews. Brielle's bail was denied after a second witness came forward, someone she had once threatened into silence. More names from their network were revealed. A former nurse in Boise, a dental assistant in San Diego, all connected by the same firm. I received one last letter in the mail. No return address, handwritten. I recognized the slant of the pen. My mother. The letter was short. We lost everything. I hope it was worth it. I read it once, then again, and then I shredded it slowly piece by piece, because yes, it was worth it. The next morning I stood outside the state testing center, clipboard in hand, ID badge clipped to my shirt this time, with my real name, Claire Hartley, not a ghost, not a placeholder, a woman with a future. I sat for the exam. Hours passed, my palms sweaty, my chest tight. But I knew this. I had studied not just medicine, but survival, strategy, integrity. When the proctor collected my test, she smiled. You look calm, I grinned. I've earned that. I walked out into the sunlight, head high, the old pen tucked in my bag. Not because I needed it, but because it reminded me of where I came from, and where I refused to return. Then just as I reached my car, my phone buzzed. Unknown number, a single message. Not everyone's gone yet. Watch your back. Story 2. I learned the exact rhythm of my father's boots on our Akron driveway before I ever spoke a word. 11 o'clock, sharp thump, pause, thump. As if he were testing the gravel, reminding me that every sound I made in this house was under surveillance. I lay on my side knees, drawn up, listening to my own breath, hitch in time with that relentless beat. The cold Ohio air smelled of rain-soaked asphalt and distant cornfields, but inside me, everything burned. My sister Abby was waiting at the bottom of the steps. She stood tall in her varsity jacket, emerald green, with a white A stitched on the chest, and held her phone like a trophy recording for her 10,000 followers. Her ponytail swung as she pointed. Speak, she hissed. Tell Dad what you did. I squeezed my eyes shut. The nightlight upstairs cast our long shadows over the porch rail. I could almost believe I was alone. I was 15, born with a crooked spine and a limp so slight, most people only noticed it. If I let them, I'd spent half my life proving I belonged. But Abby and Mom never gave me credit. Linda. My mother leaned against the screen door, coffee mug pressed to her lips, her fingers stained red from polishing Grandma's silver. She watched us with equal parts boredom and satisfaction, as though she'd paid to see the show. Come on, Mara, Abby taunted. Say it. Her voice was silk-laced with venom. Last Christmas she told me she bought me that expensive back brace to keep me on my knees where I belong. And I wore it every morning, pretending I needed it, so she'd brag on TikTok about being such a good sister. I hated it, but I needed the likes. The gravel shifted when Dad set the brick beside her foot. He'd carried it in from the old garden wall earlier, polishing it off-screen until the edges gleamed like an executioner's blade. I'd heard the metal tines of his work gloves scrape against the handle of his rarely used trowel, but I thought he was gardening. Now I realized he'd been waiting. Tell me why you shoved Abby. He boomed voice hollow as the echo under that street lamp. His face was half hidden beneath the brim of his baseball cap, but I saw the flicker in his eyes. I swallowed my lungs folding in on themselves. If I lied, Abby would cheer. If I told the truth, Dad would strike. I pictured every bruise she ever gave me, the time she shoved me into the pantry door, until the screws rattled loose the nights she slipped ice water into my mouth, so I'd choke awake. I began, but Abby laughed and shoved the camera closer. She's crying, Abby said. Even though tears were my currency, they meant weakness in this house. That's when Dad's glove connected with the brick. It swung once, slow, deliberate, and shattered against my kneecap like a hammer on bone. I didn't see him move. I only felt the world tilt. My scream ripped itself free, raw and urgent, and echoed off the garage door. Abby staggered back, dropping her phone with a crack. Mom blinked twice, not out of shock, but to erase the horror from her face. I collapsed to my knees, hot spikes of pain tearing through me as blood welled between the gravel. The brick clattered to the ground. Dad dropped his hands to his sides and said, "Now keep that mouth shut," in a tone that made no promises about future kindness. He turned boots crunching over the stones and disappeared into the shadows. Mom slid the door closed behind him. The click reverberated louder than my cry. Abby crouched beside me, wiped her tears, her crocodile tears, and whispered, "You'll get over it." Then she stood and stomped back inside, as though stepping around dog vomit. Rain began to fall in thin curtains. I didn't taste the water. I tasted iron. My vision blurred, everything spun around that perfect brick, half buried in the gravel, like a gravestone marking the end of whatever hope I'd once had. I reached for it, willing it to break apart to explode, but my fingers just brushed grit. I heard the screen door slide open again. Mom's silhouette, soft in her bathrobe, conned guilt out of the darkness. She held a mug in one hand and a grocery bag in the other, frozen peas store-brand pain meds, a soggy sandwich she'd picked up on her way home from fundraising. "This is life," she said. Voice gentle as a sermon. "You broke family rules. Now you repair yourself." She dropped the bag at my elbow and shut the door. The lock clicked. No one called 911. No one tried to stop the bleeding. My tears mixed with rain as I crawled to the porch light, dragging a slick red streak across the stones. I lay there until the cold seeped through my jeans. I listened to Abby's muffled laughter through the window, her friends' voices echoing off the linoleum while the pee bag thumped against the wall. And in that fractured stillness, I discovered something I wasn't afraid anymore. I was alive, covered in blood and gravel, more alive than I'd ever been. Somewhere between the rain and my ragged breath, a promise formed. They had taught me silence and obedience. They had taught me how to survive in their world of rules and rewards. Now I would learn how to fight back. I closed my eyes, the brick's shape etched into my palm, as if I could absorb its weight and hardness, and I vowed I would use it only this time on my own terms. The porch light flickered once, then died. Darkness swallowed the driveway. I felt the first tendrils of a plan curl in my mind, cold and precise, whispering, they would learn. They would feel what it was like to be powerless. And when they asked, why her? I'd just smile. That night, thunder rolled in like applause, and I waited for the curtain to rise. Night after that rainy driveway confrontation, I lay awake in my bed, listening to the house settle around me. Every creak in the floorboards felt like a secret footstep. My knee throbbed, but the pain had shifted from sharp fire to dull ache, almost comforting a reminder that I was still here. In the darkness, I pictured that brick, its weight compressed against my skin, and I felt an odd calm. They thought they broke me. They were wrong. By the next morning, I had a plan. I dressed quietly, pulling on dark jeans and an old hoodie that hid the sleeve of my hospital-issued brace. I paused before the mirror, tracing the faded bruise on my cheek. My reflection looked back at me, eyes darker than I remembered. I tucked a strand of hair behind my ear and whispered, "Let's begin." I started with the easiest target, Abby's sponsorship deals. She'd spent months building her perfect sister brand on Instagram and TikTok, feeding people an illusion of family harmony. She flaunted our mother's coffee shop charity, her varsity trophies, her volunteer selfies at food banks. But the truth was buried under staged photos and canned smiles. I'd stolen her login info a week earlier by guessing her favorite pet's name, Midnight, and using the date of her first soccer win. 12 simple keystrokes unlocked her digital life. That afternoon, I sat at my desk by the window, the sun low behind the Cleveland skyline. I opened her email and downloaded every spreadsheet showing ad revenue, every contract with local businesses. I copied the evidence into encrypted folders, then drafted a letter. It wasn't meant for police or FBI. This was a private strike. I addressed it, "To whom it may concern." Attached screenshots of her bank routing numbers, funneling money to an offshore account in the Caymans, and sent it to her top 3 sponsors, a health supplement company, a fitness apparel brand, and a tech gadget startup. My pulse pounded in my ears as I clicked send. That's when I knew there was no going back. That evening I sat on the front porch in near silence. The streetlights cast long, lazy shadows across our driveway, where I'd first been broken. My phone buzzed an email from Company A, subject line, urgent sponsorship inquiry. I opened it, my fingers trembling. They wrote they had paused her campaign until she provided an explanation. Company B demanded proof her ad revenue was legitimate. Company C simply unsubscribed. Abby's phone rang nonstop. Her friends, her manager, sponsors, everyone demanding answers. Her perfect world was unraveling. Inside the house, I heard her crying out in the living room, pristine with its linoleum floors and framed family photos. Through the window, I saw her slump on the couch, tears on her cheeks, phone clutched to her ear. For a moment, I almost regretted it. Then I remembered Mom's laughter, the way she'd watched me bleed on that same floor without a second thought. Abby's tears were overdue, but I wasn't finished. Next came Phase 2, discrediting Linda's charity Coffee for Community. She'd registered it as a 501c3 to dodge taxes and polish her image. I visited the credit union, where our family held accounts, and requested copies of the charity's 990 filings. The clerk asked why. I said I was updating our records for tax purposes. She laughed and handed me the documents, unsuspecting, trusting. I leafed through pages showing donations meant for single mothers diverted into personal travel funds and grocery bills. Every misappropriated dollar was a betrayal of the American dream she'd peddled. I drafted another email this time to the Akron Beacon Journal's investigative desk charity in name-only local organization accused of embezzlement. I attached the filings, a scan of Mom's signature, and a note. Please investigate. Sources available. My heart raced as I hit send at midnight. Within hours, reporters smelled a story. I watched my mother's face in the Macy's ad as her charity ran full-page feel-good spreads, now replaced online with a growing sidebar, local charity under scrutiny. The next morning, I walked into the coffee corner, branded Linda's Cup of Compassion, and ordered my usual black coffee. Linda flashed that practiced smile, unaware her smile was already in jeopardy. She asked about Abby. I said casually, "Something's wrong with her accounts." Her eyes flickered. "How do you know?" she asked. I shrugged, lifting my mug. "Just heard from a friend." She stared at me, then hurried to the back room to take a call. Her voice pitched low, urgent. Back in my room, I reviewed emails. Company A had pulled Abby's pending $5,000 payment. The Beacon Journal editor replied, "We're on it." And Linda's secretary emailed her boss, possible lawsuit threat. I leaned back, exhaling slowly. 2 phases complete. The house of cards was wobbling. But that night I also heard something new, the click of the screen door lock behind me. I turned. Mom stood there, arms crossed, face pale under the porch light. She didn't speak, just held out a sealed envelope addressed to my beloved daughter. My pulse jumped. I hadn't expected her to fight back so soon. She watched me with unblinking eyes, pride and fear tangled on her face. I tucked the envelope into my jacket and walked past her without a word. Inside, I knew could be anything. Denial letters from lawyers, threats of restraining orders, pleas for mercy. But I was ready. More than ready. I'd learned silence and obedience. Now, I wielded truth like a weapon. As I climbed the stairs to my room, I glanced at the darkened driveway. The silhouette of our house was still as a tomb, but inside, the air crackled with tension. I felt alive, more alive than ever. Tomorrow would bring their response, Abby's sponsors demanding answers. Linda's charity under headlines, maybe even Dad's reputation on the line. I slid the envelope onto my desk under a single beam of light. Outside, the early dawn crept over Akron, pink and faint. I lay back on my pillow, mind sharp as broken glass. They had forced my silence, but I had found my voice and I intended to make them listen. That's when my phone buzzed again. A new email subject line, anonymous tip, received investigate Tom Harrison. My breath caught. They were looking at him now. The father who held that brick, the man who taught me fear. I sat up, heart-pounding, eyes wide. They wanted Tom, and tomorrow they would get him. I closed my eyes and smiled. The stage was set, and Act 3 was about to begin. I woke before sunrise, the pale gray light slipping through my blinds like a warning. My phone buzzed twice before I even sat up. 2 more emails, both from banks I'd never contacted before. Urgent inquiry into auto loan account, and fraud alert credit activity. Suspicious. I pressed my palm to my forehead. They were coming for Dad. I grabbed yesterday's envelope off my desk, the one they left open on the kitchen counter, and felt the crisp manila bend under my fingers. Inside, the loan document showed his cherry red Ford Mustang, registered not under his name, but under Helping Hands Foundation, that tax-dodging shell Linda set up 2 summers ago. He'd thought it clever, donate ownership to a fake charity right off the payments, never suspect the government would come knocking. But I had forwarded the loan history directly to the Department of Motor Vehicles and 3 major lenders. Now the repo notices were rolling in. I slipped into the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face, and tied back my hair. The bruise on my knee throbbed, but I pushed the pain aside. It was nothing compared to the tension coiling in my chest. Today our driveway would witness something bigger than me bleeding in the rain. I slipped out of the house before anyone else stirred, hood-up sneakers silent on the dewy grass. The Mustang sat where it always did, gleaming in the dawn hood ornament catching stray light. I crouched behind the wheel well and popped the trunk to double-check the VIN. Satisfied, I walked to my car, a battered Honda Civic, and settled behind the wheel. I glanced once at the Mustang through the windshield, then drove off toward the repo yard on the edge of town. The yard was a fenced lot littered with seized pickups and SUVs. Two men in neon vests guided giant tow trucks dragging cars by winch toward a metal shed. I parked a block away, heart hammering. Slipping out again, I approached the lot gate and held up the email printout. "I'm here to confirm this repossession," I whispered, handing it to a guard whose badge read Kincaid. He glanced at the paper, nodded, and pressed the button. The gate hissed open. We walked inside. "That Mustang was flagged last night," Kincaid said, voice low. "We need one more confirmation before we haul it." I handed him my phone, still logged into Dad's email, showing the notice from the auto loan company, stating the account was delinquent ownership transferred for tax evasion. He scrolled, frowned, then nodded. "Got it. We'll tow it out in 20. Relief was electric. As he locked my phone in his pocket, I felt the weight of every overheard office joke about rich suburban fraudsters and charity con artists. I turned to leave, but he stopped me. "You okay, kid?" he asked, tipping his hard hat. "This family business," I hesitated, saw compassion in his eyes, then shook my head. "Just making sure justice is served." By the time I drove back home, the repo truck was already hooked to the Mustang. Neighbors lined their porches, coffee mugs in hand, watching the crimson icon of Dad's pride lifted onto the flatbed. He emerged from the garage in faded jeans and a flannel shirt, face wild as the engine's roar. Abby peeked from behind him, mascara running. Linda stood on the porch, her cardigan-slipping hands twisted in the knit. Dad approached the truck, voice cracking. "What the hell is this?" he shouted. The tow driver pointed at the VIN sticker. "We've got the paperwork from the lender. Your car's been repossessed." Dad's shoulders slumped. He reached out as if to grab the truck, then dropped his hand. "This is a mistake," he stammered. "CNBC Mercedes and Brookside Bank are going to hear about this," he growled, half threat, half plea. Abby rushed forward, phone out. "Dad, can we live stream this? It'll blow up." She tapped her screen frantically, hope and betrayal flickering in her eyes. Linda enveloped Dad in a shaky embrace, muttering apologies. I'll fix this, Tom," she whispered. Somewhere, a child chattered about the value of a second-hand Mustang and family loyalty. I watched from my Civic's rearview mirror, chest tight, every bruise on my body, a silent cheer. I felt a surge of triumph. This was my Phase 3 Dad's downfall. He had taught me to be silent. Now the only sound in the driveway was the tow truck's diesel engine and his ragged breathing. But I wasn't done. As the truck rolled away, I slipped back into the house through the side door. In the kitchen, Linda sat at the linoleum table, coffee gone cold in her mug. Abby was posting a selfie by the Mustang's open door. Surprise morning, she'd captioned, unaware the image would later be used against her. Dad collapsed into a chair, head in hands. I stood in the doorway, hands shoved into my hoodie pocket. They both looked up, surprise and fear in their eyes. Why Dad croaked. "Why are you doing this?" I let silence stretch. My knee ached, my heart thundered. I remembered the driveway that first night, the brick and the laughter. "You taught me survival," I said softly, voice steady. "Now I'm teaching you consequences." A single photograph slid from my pocket onto the table, me at 15, shirt, drenched in my own blood, knees, bruised. Abby's handwriting was scrawled on the back. "She deserves nothing." Linda's eyes flicked to the photo, to me, and then to Dad. "Mara," she started, but I cut her off. "Don't call me that." I stepped forward, every movement measured. "This is Phase 3. You lost your car. Phase 4 is coming." I turned, walked past them, and left the kitchen light blinking in my wake. As I climbed the stairs, my phone buzzed again. A private message from Jared. "Feds are sniffing around local charity fraud." "Need any docs?" I replied with a single word. "Yes." Then I paused, hand on my bedroom door. The creak of the hallway floorboard beneath Mom's sandal made me freeze. She was following me. I swung the door open, expecting confrontation. Instead, I found Monica standing by my desk, eyes bright with concern. She held a manila folder bulging with papers. "Thought you'd need these," she said quietly. "IRS subpoenas, bank statements, even that security cam footage you asked for." My throat went dry. Monica had risked everything to help me. I took the folder with trembling fingers. "Thank you," I whispered, voice thick. She nodded, but her gaze flicked toward the closed door. "Be careful," she said. "They're circling." I looked back at her heart, pounding not with fear, but with resolve. The next phase would hit harder than any brick, and this time they would never recover. The hallway light flickered as I closed the door behind me. I flipped on my desk lamp, spread the folder's contents across my bed, legal forms, handwritten notes, blurry photos of Linda signing checks at midnight. The evidence was mounting the timeline, clear, Abby's downfall, Linda's public shame, Dad's financial ruin. Phase 4 was ready to ignite. But as midnight's chime echoed, my phone slipped under my pillow. A final message popped up from an unknown number. "We know who you are. Stop now, or lose everything." My breath caught. The war had escalated beyond my own family. I stared at the ceiling, heart thudding. Outside, the street was silent. Inside, danger pulsed like a second heartbeat, and I couldn't wait to strike back. The morning after the repo truck hauled Dad's Mustang, our house felt hollow, porcelain dishes rattling in cupboards, framed photos leaning like ghosts. I stayed in my room until noon, poring over the files Monica brought. Linda's 990 returns, court subpoenas, donation logs littered with missing funds. I traced each diverted dollar, $2,500 for a single mom retreat rerouted to a private Uber account. $4,000 earmarked for food baskets sent to Linda's grocery bills. Each entry was a stitch unraveling the charity's facade. I slipped out mid-afternoon in plain jeans and a neutral sweater, no hoodie to draw attention, and drove to the women's shelter of Cleveland. Inside, boxes of diapers lined the hallway. Volunteers folded laundry and stirred chili in crock pots. I signed in as Marley Mask, lowered careless smile perfected. Monica met me by the donation table, eyes bright with urgency. "They're freezing the charity's accounts," she whispered. "Feds served a notice yesterday. No one can access funds." Relief hit me like ice. Grandma's silver and the charity bake sales had built Linda's empire. Now the vault was shuttered. We didn't speak of Dad or Abby. Our task was shelter, first loading bags of donated clothes into the back of my Civic, every sweatshirt, every pair of worn sneakers that would keep real women warm. With each box I lifted, I felt something shift. Justice wasn't just about retaliation. It could rebuild. Monica's hands shook when she pushed the last crate inside. "Thank you," she said. "For more than, you know." I managed a nod. We loaded the trunk with canned goods, then parted ways without a hug. Risk was still risk. Back home, the first headline popped up on my phone: "Beloved local charity, Coffee for Community, accused of 1.8 million embezzlement." It was plastered on the Beacon Journal's homepage, accompanied by a grainy photo of Linda at last year's fundraiser, microphone in hand, eyes shining. The comment section lit up, "Scandal. How could she I donated trust no one?" I closed the app. Linda's perfect veneer was gone. Inside the kitchen, Abby hovered by the coffee maker herself, whipping up shots of guilt and bitterness. She wore her varsity jacket even at home, as if armor. I leaned against the doorway. "Mom's charity?" I asked. She snorted. "It's fine. She'll cry her way out of this." Her voice was brittle. "You didn't hear the bank close their account. Advisors won't touch her." I stepped closer. "That's not all. I saw the legal notice. They've subpoenaed her personal accounts." Abby's face twitched, her pristine makeup smeared. She bit her lip, the first real sign of fear I'd seen. That evening at dinner, Dad pulled the table like a desperate quizmaster. "Anyone know what's going on with the nonprofit?" Linda pushed peas around her plate, eyes darting to Dad, then Abby. No one spoke. Outside, the streetlights blinked on, and I caught my reflection in the window, hoodie gone, shoulders squared. They were the ones stumbling now. The next day, Abby's social feed lay dormant. Her stories were gone, her sponsorships paused. She tried to post a video apology camera, set just right. Tear-swiped face, but paused mid-recording, deleted it, and locked her phone. I watched from the living room couch chest tight. Her identity, the polished, smiling, perfect sister, was rotting in plain view. Phase 4 required patience. I drafted another missive this time to the State Attorney General's office, detailed timelines of donations, matching them to credit card statements showing personal charges. I attached screen grabs of Linda's online gift shop, redirecting payments into a PayPal account under her maiden name. I sent it just before midnight. My heart thumped as I hit send. It felt almost too easy. By dawn, the AG's press office tweeted, "We are reviewing allegations of nonprofit embezzlement. No further comment." News vans circled our block. Reporters with microphones pressed neighbors. "Do you support Coffee for Community?" One elderly woman spat, "Never again." The house shook with rushing footsteps as Linda barred the front door. Abby peered through the peephole, face ashen. Inside, tension coiled like a snake. Linda called her lawyer every argument, a scramble for damage control. Abby paced phone, clutched like a lifeline, but no sponsors responded. Dad sat at the table, head in hands. The echo of Mom's laughter that once haunted me now seemed distant, a broken record playing for an empty room. That night I received a text from Abby's main sponsor. Due to pending investigation, we are terminating your contract. My thumb hovered over delete, then I archived it unread. On the kitchen counter, an envelope lay addressed to Linda, Office of the Attorney General. I imagined her hands trembling as she slid it open. I pictured her reading declarations. Your charity's bank accounts are frozen pending criminal inquiry. My stomach twisted with vengeful delight. But as midnight approached, another message lit my screen. Mom's number, though I rarely saved it. Your mercy ends now. Leave us be, no tears, no pleading, just a command. My breath caught. They were not finished. I slid the phone into my pocket and looked around the dark house. No photos, no trophies, just empty chairs and cold dishes. As I climbed the stairs to my room, I paused at Abby's door, her varsity jacket thrown over the chair, the scent of her perfume faint in the hallway. I murmured, "It's not over." My reflection flickered in the hallway mirror, and I straightened my spine. Outside, the wind rattled the window frame, as if whispering a challenge. Phase 4 had struck deep, but Phase 5, the personal reckoning, was still to come. And in the hush before dawn, I realized they would never see it coming.